Hello everyone. Today, I want to talk about something that could change your life. Not just how to learn English, but how to do it when you have nothing. No teacher. No classes. Not even the internet. Only a dream. And a broken TV. This is a story. My story. It all started in a small, quiet town, a place so far from the city that some people didn't even believe it was real. There were no English teachers. No tutors. And at my home, there wasn't even internet. Just one broken television that only showed shadows and shapes. Sometimes the sound worked. Most of the time, it didn't. I was 10 years old. A skinny boy with big dreams and no real way to reach them. I lived with my mother and younger sister. My father had passed away when I was 5, and since then, my mother worked in a bakery from morning till night. She made just enough to keep the lights on. Sometimes. We didn't have much. But I had one thing, something no one could take away. I had desire. I wanted to learn English. Not just because it was cool or popular. I wanted to speak it because I believed it would change my life. One afternoon, I saw a group of tourists walking through our dusty streets. They were laughing, pointing at buildings, taking pictures. They spoke a language I didn't understand. English. One of them smiled at me and said something like, "Hey there, little guy." I stared back like a statue. I couldn't answer. I couldn't even say hello. I felt a strange heat rise in my chest. Not anger. Not fear. It was something else, shame. And right after that, determination. That night, I sat outside under the moonlight. I looked up at the stars and made myself a promise. One day, I will speak English. Even if no one teaches me. Even if I have nothing. I'll find a way. 2 days later, I walked 3 miles to the town library. It wasn't much, just an old room with wooden shelves and books with torn covers. I asked the librarian, an old man with a white beard, "Do you have any books, in English?" He raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "I want to learn." He looked at me for a moment, then walked into the back room. When he returned, he held something wrapped in a cloth. "This is all I've got," he said. It was a dusty, old English dictionary. "Can I take it?" He laughed. "You can keep it. No one ever asks for it." I held it like treasure. I didn't have a proper notebook. So I tore pages from old school books and started copying the words from the dictionary, one by one. I wrote the English word, and beside it, the meaning in my language. Then I said it aloud. Over and over. Every night, I would sit near the broken TV. There was no sound. The screen flickered like ghosts were dancing inside it. But I didn't care. I imagined the scenes. If someone walked into a room, I'd say, "He enters." If a dog barked, I'd say, "The dog is barking." I built scenes in my head, even though I couldn't hear the voices. My sister thought I was weird. "You're talking to yourself," she'd giggle. But I wasn't. I was talking to the world. At school, we didn't have English class. But I found ways. I practiced with trees, pretending they were people. I'd greet them, "Hello, how are you today?" Then I'd answer myself, "I am fine, thank you." People in town thought I was a little mad. But I didn't care. I knew every word I wrote was a step closer to the life I dreamed of. Sometimes I'd sneak into the small internet cafe near the market. I didn't have money, but the owner let me watch videos for a few minutes when business was slow. I watched English cartoons without subtitles, just trying to catch words I knew: go, stop, run, eat. Each time I understood a new word, it felt like winning the lottery. Years passed like pages blowing in the wind. I grew taller. My voice changed. My world stayed small, but something inside me had grown enormous. My notebook, now filled with hundreds of English words, became my most valuable possession. Its cover was torn, and the pages were soft at the corners from being turned so many times. Some nights, when I couldn't sleep, I would run my fingers over the words and whisper them out loud, one after another like prayer. And then, it happened again. It was a hot summer afternoon. The sun baked the rooftops, and the wind carried dust through the narrow streets. I had just finished delivering bread for my mother when I saw them, a small group of tourists walking through town. The same kind of people who had once passed by when I was a boy too afraid to speak. But this time was different. My heart began to race. I could hear it thumping in my ears like a drum. I wiped my hands on my shirt and took a deep breath. Then I walked straight toward them. I didn't wait to be spoken to. I didn't freeze or look at the ground. I smiled, a real smile, and said, "Hello. You need help?" The group stopped, a little surprised. One of them, a tall woman with sunburned cheeks and a blue backpack, returned the smile. "Yes. Actually, we're looking for the bus station." I felt a strange power rise in my chest. Not pride, exactly. It was something quieter, deeper, a feeling like I had just stepped through a door I had been knocking on for years. I pointed and said clearly, "That way. Go straight and turn left at the second shop. You'll see a blue sign." They nodded and thanked me. One of them even waved goodbye. I stood there in the street after they left, the sun burning overhead, but I didn't move. Because in that one moment, I had proof, I could do it. I had spoken English. And they had understood me. After that day, everything changed. I began to look forward to seeing tourists. Every time someone foreign passed through our little town, I ran to them with the same big smile and said, "Hello. Need help?" Some just needed directions. Others wanted to know where to eat or what to see. A few asked me about local history, and I did my best to explain using simple words, gestures, and sometimes even drawings in the dirt. Each interaction taught me something new. I listened to their accents. I watched their lips move. I repeated their sentences silently, copying how they spoke. I practiced until my tongue stopped tripping and my words flowed smoother. One day, a man from Canada came to town with his daughter. They had soft voices and curious eyes. I noticed their confusion at the dusty crossroads near the market and offered to guide them to a small guest house. I even told them about the old temple nearby and the best place to try local bread. They were kind, polite. But what struck me most was how much they listened, really listened, when I spoke. As we stood by the guest house gate, the man looked at me and said, "You speak really well. Did you go to school for this?" I smiled, a little shyly. "No. I learned by myself. At home." His eyebrows rose. "Really?" "Yes. No teacher. Just books and practice." He seemed impressed. I didn't think much of it at the time. We shook hands, and they left the next day. But before they did, the man gave me a small card with his email on it. "Stay in touch," he said. "You've got something special." 3 years later, when I had just turned 20, I was helping my sister with her schoolwork when a notification appeared on my old phone. An email. From the Canadian man. My hands trembled as I opened it. The message was short, but every word burned into my heart. "Would you like to work in Canada? We need someone who understands both our culture and yours. I remember you. And I believe in your potential." I didn't move. I just sat there, staring at the screen, my breath caught somewhere between my chest and my throat. This wasn't just a job. This was the universe answering every silent promise I had whispered under the stars. This was the reward for every lonely hour spent reading a dictionary by candlelight. Every sentence I spoke to trees. Every scene I imagined through the broken TV. Everything had led to this moment. Telling my mother was the hardest part. She was in the kitchen when I gave her the news. Her hands were covered in flour, her face tired from another long day at the bakery. At first, she didn't understand. "Canada?" she asked. I nodded. "A real job. They will help with papers, with everything." She didn't speak. Just looked at me, long and deep, as if trying to see the little boy I once was beneath the young man I had become. Then she smiled. A trembling, beautiful smile. She reached out, placed her flour-covered hand on my cheek, and whispered, "Your father would be so proud." We hugged. We cried. And then we began to pack. I left with one small suitcase, half full of clothes and half full of memories. My old notebook came with me, folded, worn, and sacred. When I landed in Canada, the air felt different, cleaner, colder, filled with new sounds and unfamiliar words everywhere. But I didn't feel afraid. I worked at a cultural exchange office where people from many countries came for help settling into their new lives. I helped them fill forms, understand systems, and most importantly, feel heard. I made mistakes, of course. I mispronounced words. I got confused. But I always smiled, always tried again. Every day, I learned something new. Because I was no longer the boy with the broken TV. I was the man who had taught himself how to dream in another language. And that made me unstoppable. Now, if you've listened to my story, truly listened, I want to tell you one final thing. If I can do it, with no teacher, no school, no phone, and no internet, you can too. You don't need a fancy classroom. You don't need expensive courses or perfect grammar books. What you need is a reason. A strong reason. A fire in your heart that says, I will learn this, no matter what. Learning English is not just about speaking well. It's about being brave. It's about waking up every day and saying, even if no one helps me, I will help myself. It's about believing that the world is bigger than your street, your town, your fear. There will be moments when you feel stuck. When you forget words. When people laugh at your accent. When you feel like giving up. But don't. Because every sentence you learn is a key. And one day, those keys will unlock doors you never even knew existed.